Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next 3 hours, and coming up at midnight, of course, it is your chance to talk back. And I just found this story really interesting because retirement, I suppose, comes to all of us, and I just want to know if retirement was everything you thought it would be. Because a lot of people are sitting waiting, you know, going, oh, I desperately want to retire, I really want to give up work. And many people have got no choice but to do that, of course, as they get older. But this survey, it's 1 in 6 retirees have said that they'd already returned to employment. And another 1 in 6 are considering doing so. So have you had to go back to work? Or did you want to go back to work? What was the biggest shock to you about retiring? You waited all those years, you thought about it, you dreamed about it, and then it happened. What was the biggest shock to you about retirement? Is it comfortable? Can you survive without getting a job? What about the state pension? Does that provide enough for you? Or have you considered that you've really got to go back to work? And if you did go back to work, what did you end up doing? So I really want to know about this. I want to know if you're considering unretiring because you can't afford to stay retired, or you've just decided that it's too boring, or whatever it is. Was it everything you thought it would be? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate. We do call you back. And text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Let me know what I've got in store for myself. I don't have a private pension, though, or a work pension. So I think I'm going to have to keep working to some degree till I drop down dead, I think. But many people may also think like that. So, right, coming up as well on the programme, John Boothman, the fabulous John Boothman, joins us from Scotland. He'll be taking us through the front pages of the newspapers. Also, Susanna Streeter joins us, who's going to be talking to us about this report that shows that 1 in 6 people have retired are returning to the workplace. We're going to be talking as well about the Lebanon-Israel talks that happened in the US this afternoon to see if that can be settled. But before that, this is really interesting. Like I was saying to Peter, we had somebody contact the programme, it was a doctor actually, contacted the programme because he was worried about the amount of money that was leaving the NHS in private contracts, private companies holding our files, private companies providing healthcare. And some people would say, well, look, it's a good job that the private sector can step in. But the profit that is being made could have supplied, in 2 years, could have supplied us with 10,000 doctors and 20,000 nurses. So that's the level of money that is leaving the NHS to go to the private sector. And when this study was done, they found out that a lot of the money as well was going offshore and into private companies. And so it's not even being circulated here in the UK. MPs are now calling for there to be a cap on profit made by these private companies. It's not unprecedented. It happened in the care sector. It's happened in security as well, that companies are limited to how much profit they can make. At the moment, that is not the case within the NHS. So these companies can just take as much money as they like out of the NHS. Joining me now to discuss this is David Rowland, who's author of this study and director of the Centre for Health and Public Interest. Good to speak to you, David. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Is it as simple as saying that this money is leaving the NHS? I mean, it must be benefiting the NHS as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is payments which are made by the NHS to these private companies, and that's been used to cover the cost of employing nurses and doctors and also providing treatment. That's not what we're talking about here, though. What we're talking about here is the money which is made after all those things are being paid for. This is the profit margin that is being generated. In some cases, actually in 130 of the companies that we looked at about 760 in total. About 130 of those were making profit margins in excess of 20%.
Wow.
Which basically means that, you pay, just £1 out of every five that you're paying to these companies is actually not going towards patient care, but is actually leaking out of the system. So that's really the concern here. There's obviously a debate about the role of the private sector within the NHS. But I think as taxpayers, we need to know that as much of the money that we pay to the private sector to deliver healthcare to, ourselves and our friends and our relatives actually goes towards delivering care and doesn't leak out of the system. And so that's really why we did the study, was to try and work out how much is leaking out, trying to give people an opportunity locally as well to find out how much is leaking out in their local areas. So if you go on our website, put in your postcode, you can find out how much is leaking out in your area of the NHS as well. And that's really about trying to ensure that there's greater scrutiny and transparency and accountability about where taxpayer money, which goes to the private sector, ends up.
Is this because the NHS is bad at procurement? I mean, the world of procurement, we already know that in some trusts, I'm making up the numbers now, but I'm just trying to get the scale here, that you'll pay, in some trusts will pay 50p for a syringe and another trust will pay, £1 for a syringe. That it seems to be so disparate that they don't join up and use that incredible purchasing power.
No, I don't think that is the case, actually, because I think what we're talking about here isn't something which is related to particular parts of the NHS. This is, if you like, a kind of a market system which has been created by government, which really didn't pay any attention to a number of things. First of all, one was how do you actually make a profit out of providing care to people in very vulnerable situations? How do you make a profit out of somebody who, for example, has dementia, or a child who is in, a children's home? How do you go about doing that? That question was never asked, nor was the question ever asked, what is a reasonable profit to be made from the provision of these services? And thirdly, and you alluded to it in your introduction, who actually owns these companies? At the moment, we have a system where none of those questions are being asked of the contracts which are being struck between the NHS and the private sector. And that's not down to individual NHS hospital trusts or individual NHS commissioners. It's down to the overall system which is being created by government over the last 20 years, which is designed to attract the private sector into delivering NHS services.
But who is striking these deals? Who is signing these contracts?
Well, I mean, to be honest, in some instances, there aren't even any contracts in place. The system has been set up in a very kind of permissive way to allow companies to come in to deliver NHS services where there isn't even a contract between the NHS commissioning body who funds the service and the private company delivering it. That's actually allowable under the rules. And we did a study quite recently looking at the use of the private sector to deliver ADHD diagnosis, which is obviously a very controversial and growing area of NHS care. And in the vast majority of cases where money was exchanged between the NHS and these private companies, there was no contract in place directly between the NHS body and the private company. Now, you probably think that's absolutely extraordinary, and it is. But what that comes from is the way that this market in general has been set up by government to allow the opportunity for the private sector to come in as easily as possible. And we're saying, look, we've got to take a step back here and try and work out how best do we ensure that the arrangements that we have with the private sector to deliver care, that there's clear transparency, accountability and scrutiny of how public money is used.
There will be a lot of people who are stunned, actually, by the fact that as taxpayers we fund the NHS, and yet these companies are profiting in such a massive way from not just taking it from taxpayers, but taking it from frontline patient care as well. I mean, this is quite extra. We know that there are a lot of companies circling the NHS like vultures wanting to get their slice of the pie because it is such a huge pie. But a lot of people will be stunned that these people are literally taking taxpayers' money and sending it offshore.
Well, I think it's really important that we account for every single pound that is spent in the NHS. And, you know, that is something which happens very regularly in terms of how NHS trusts are audited and how Parliament and the National Audit Office look at how the NHS spends money. There's a very different set of rules when that money goes from the NHS and into private companies. And really what we're saying is that we need to change those rules so that we can be clear about where money is going. Is it being spent, for example, on paying for staff, or is it going out of the system in the form of profit, or is it in some cases we've seen where you get private equity backed companies involved, is it actually going just to pay the interest on the very high cost debt which has been loaded onto the NHS provider companies in order to extract money in a different way? It's very complex, this system, but at the moment we have very, very little transparency and awareness about where public money is going.
So they're not audited in the same way as the NHS spend is audited?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, you know, the reason why we did this study, and it took 18 months, we went through millions of data items, was to try and find out where money goes. And you know, we're a small think tank. You know, the government, the National Audit Office, Parliament hasn't to date asked these questions. So we've done the work with the intention of saying, you know, to policymakers and, you know, yourselves as journalists to say, look, come on, we've got to start asking some questions about where money is going.
I mean, but it is an extraordinary amount of money, isn't it? This profit that you're talking about, 1.6 billion. And as I said, that's nearly 10,000 doctors and nearly 20,000 nurses could be funded for that sort of money. And we know that we've got problems with frontline staffing levels. So what is the answer to stop private companies from doing this work, or is it just to stop them from profiting?
Well, I mean, I think, as I said, there's a big debate that goes on between the political parties, within political parties, about the use of the private sector. You know, some people are very pro using the private sector, some people are very against using the private sector. We're not really engaging in that particular debate when we're doing this research. What we're saying is that actually, in order to address some of this leakage, what you need to do is to actually say, okay, you want to be involved in providing services to the NHS. Number one, you need to be tax registered in the UK. I think that's not controversial. It's not a radical suggestion. Number two, you're going to be getting a contract for a number of years. It's pretty low risk because it's the government and the taxpayer who will be paying you. And without the income that you get from the taxpayer, then you wouldn't have a business. So let's agree what would be a reasonable profit for you to make from the provision of these services. That we would say would be a good start in being able to address some of this.
But it's extraordinary to me. I'm sorry, I just can't believe that isn't already the case. I mean, that's what I'm finding gobsmacking, is that I cannot believe it's just so that they're being so lax with taxpayers' money, that people can just profit in this way from a system that we all hold dear.
I mean, it is quite extraordinary. It's not something that is very well known about. The way in which the NHS and local authorities use the private sector to deliver health and social care is very complex. I think it's important to recognise, though, that this is an approach that we've taken to the delivery of public services for 20 years or more, whereby it's been the view that the private sector will deliver things more efficiently, and so therefore we need to create conditions where the private sector can come in easily in terms that it's comfortable with in order to deliver those services. And so I think the situation that we've got now isn't something that's happened over the last couple of years. It's been a process over the last 20 years of governments of all colours saying to the private sector, look, come in, we need your assistance, we need your help to provide public services. And the terms of those arrangements with the private sector, it has to be said, have generally been pretty favourable towards the private sector and not necessarily in the interest of the taxpayer.
Are there checks and balances on things such as cronyism? I mean, I ask simply because of the massive Palantir contract that has just been awarded, where it seems that Peter Mandelson had a role in that. It was very quickly handed out to Palantir, and I know there's some controversy surrounding that contract and how much we can trust this American data mining company to look after our data in the NHS. So is there oversight as to who, as you said, to make sure that you're UK tax registered would be a start?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Palantir issue is very controversial, and it's raised a lot of controversy within the NHS, and there's lots of people outside of the NHS who are very concerned about it. I think, in truth, the problem isn't just about Palantir in this instance. And we try not to sort of pick on particular companies. We try and talk about the system in general. But there's never been a debate had about what type of company do you want to be involved in the delivery of NHS services. It's pretty much been a open door to any type of company that wishes to do that. There isn't any real checks on who owns companies. We've looked at certain providers of social care services where the actual ultimate owner of that service, even though it's delivering very vital services to older people, is completely impossible to track down.
Wow.
And that doesn't seem to me to be a sensible way of engaging with private companies, because, in the world of football now, we're starting to introduce regulation of football clubs, asking questions about who owns them, asking questions about their finances. We think at the very least that something similar should apply when you've got companies who are providing care to our older people or to our kids, or, to people who are in some very vulnerable situations. I
mean, like I was saying again in my talk up, that this wouldn't be unprecedented to have that information and even to cap profits, would it? Because it happens in other sectors that the profits are capped. So this isn't a big leap of imagination.
No, I mean, we don't think that the recommendations that we put forward around kind of capping profits, around transparency, around ownership, are radical recommendations. And as you say, it's the case that in the world of defence contracting, when the Ministry of Defence buys stuff from the defence companies, there's an agreement about what a reasonable rate of return is there from those contracts. If you look in America, there's great transparency when states procure care services for older people from care homes about where the money that the taxpayer pays in those states ends up in the care system. So, this isn't, as I say, a radical set of proposals. It really is just about being commonsensical in terms of ensuring that taxpayer money goes to where it needs to go, which is caring for people and paying the wages of NHS staff, rather than leaking out of the system.
Can you see that a world where more and more private companies get involved with the NHS? I mean, certainly all it takes is a political party change. We know that Reform want to take us into an insurance-based system and open up more to the private sector. Can you see a world where that would happen?
I mean, I think if you look at the trajectory of the way in which the NHS or taxpayers have been increasingly spending money in the private sector, that trajectory is happening. Whether the public are comfortable with that is unclear. I've been looking at political party manifestos going back 20 years. I have yet to see in any of those party manifestos any party which has stood for election saying what we're going to do is to hand over the provision of care for children to private equity companies that are owned overseas. I don't think that would necessarily go down too well with the electorate. I don't know, I'm not entirely sure, but I think if that is the way in which any political party wants to go, then they need to be aware of the downside risks of that. The possibility you'll lose more money from the system as a result of increasing the amount of private companies involved. But also you've got to be kind of absolutely honest and transparent with the public that is actually what your intention is, because thus far, a lot of these changes that have happened, they haven't been as a result of government introducing laws or putting anything in their manifestos. They've happened over time incrementally and without the level of scrutiny and transparency that's needed in order to ensure that taxpayers' money is properly protected and that healthcare is delivered in the way that it should be.
I mean, it is extraordinary. And like I was saying earlier, David, we had a doctor, an A&E doctor, contact the programme. And this is why we came to you to say, look, we're really worried about the amount of money that's leaving the NHS and going into these private companies. So it is a known phenomenon, certainly within the NHS. But I had no idea that it was so lax. So thank you for the work that you've done. Remind us or tell us the email if people and the web address to go and check your local trust.
Yeah, so if you Google, NHS profit map, you just put that in Google, it will come up, and then you can enter into your postcode, and it will tell you how much is leaking out in your local NHS area and how much that leakage could have been used to pay for the salaries of doctors or nurses over a 2-year period.
I'm definitely doing that. So it's the NHS profit map. David, thank you very much indeed. It's been absolutely fascinating. I'm sure we'll talk again. David Rowland, author of the study and director of the Centre for Health and the Public Interest. They're the independent research think tank which looks at the relationship between NHS and private companies. I had no idea that was going on. Quick break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. Just a reminder that coming up we have John Boothman at the top of the hour. It's always one of my favourites when John's in, so I love talking to him. So he'll be going through the papers. Also, of course, we've got Talkback, the hour at 12 o'clock that is all yours, and we'll be talking about retirement as we look into a study that says that many people now, 1 in 6 people now who are retired, are unretiring themselves. So in other words, they're going back to work or trying to find a job. I'd be interested to know how easy it is to find a job once you're in your 60s and maybe in your 70s. But let me know, was retirement everything you expected it to be? And if you're not retired yet, are you expecting you ever will? Because I don't have a private pension. I was always freelance, so I never had the money to, single parent, you know, all of that, never had the cash to put aside for a private pension. So I know that to some degree I will be working until I drop down dead. I mean, I probably do, you know, paper reviews on some channels or whatever, become an expert in something, and you know, get paid a couple of quid every time you appear on somewhere. That's probably what my future looks like, unless I suddenly turn around and become really brilliant at painting, which I'm trying to, but it's not really working at the moment. But yeah, I just wonder if retirement is everything you thought it would be, or if you think you will ever retire, and what kind of work you do that you think you can keep on working. I'm really interested in this because, of course, I know a lot of people who they call it working on the trowel, builders, plumbers, people like that, and they can't keep working. They literally can't. You know, their back goes, or their knees go, or their eyesight goes, and they can't, you know, whatever it is. So there's a lot of people who can't continue in the work that they do. I just sit on a chair and talk. I reckon I could probably do that into my 70s, as many people do, as many men do, anyway, on television and radio. But I know that I won't get to retire. So I'm just wondering if you've retired, or if you're unretiring, why? Have you been able to afford your retirement? Can you manage on a state pension? I'm just asking for a friend. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and send me a message, please. Put the word talk and your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. So we normally would look at the Strait of Hormuz or what's going on in Iran, but a big part of the jigsaw puzzle of peace over the region is what's happening in Lebanon. We've seen 2,000 people being killed in Lebanon. You've had an awful lot of innocent people killed there by Israeli aggression. But the Israelis say that they need to do this because they need to get Hezbollah crushed. They need them to lay down their weapons, and this is the way that they're going to do it. So this afternoon, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, hosted a meeting in Washington with the US's Israeli ambassador and the Lebanese ambassador to the country. It's the first direct diplomatic talks between the two countries in over 3 decades, aimed at ending fighting between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah group. Well, no immediate outcome was expected, but the discussion seemed to go quite well. Over 2,000 people, like I said, have been killed in Israeli military operations in Lebanon that began on the 2nd of March, just days after the US and Israeli strikes began in Iran. So, with this being such an important part of the peace talks, we talk now to David Dowd, who's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., and his work focuses on Lebanon and Hezbollah. David, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining me. The leadership of Lebanon have for some time agreed that Hezbollah needed disarming, haven't they? And they've been slow to do it, but that was their aim anyway.
Well, thank you for having me on first. It's not just slow to do it, they haven't done it. When we look at the course of Lebanon's actions since the November 27, 2024 ceasefire, we see a series of actions that have then or statements rather, declarations that have then fallen victim to domestic considerations. So let's start with February 2025, when the new government took office. They, for the first time since the civil war ended, removed the resistance clause from the cabinet policy statement. Every cabinet since then has included a so-called resistance clause, which effectively gave Hezbollah official imprimatur and, legally speaking, made it an organ of the state to some degree. This government took it away. And then moving forward, September 25th of 2025, or sorry, September 5th, the government welcomes, does not approve, welcomes the LAF plan to disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani River. This had shifted from, by the end of the year, right? This had shifted from total disarmament of Hezbollah by the end of the year, which the government had announced that being its intention a month prior. And then on January 8th of 2026, the Lebanese Armed Forces declares it has completed this mission of disarming Hezbollah south of the Litani River, which has proven to be untrue. And the reason for that is that Hezbollah has, despite the degradation it has suffered at Israel's hands in the ongoing conflict that started on October 8th of 2023, retained enough of its military power to be daunting vis-a-vis the LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, and enough social support among Lebanese Shiites to be able to threaten the government that any forcible attempt to disarm the group would result in civil war. What this has resulted in, unfortunately, is the Lebanese government trying to negotiate, get Hezbollah to agree to disarmament, while Hezbollah has adamantly said it refuses to disarm, and has boasted about its regeneration efforts. Right, so Lebanon's fear has created an inaction on the part of the Lebanese government. And the status quo has enabled Hezbollah to regenerate and in early March to restart the conflict.
So what does it look like then when you have peace talks that don't include Hezbollah? I mean, if you've got Lebanon and Israel talking, it feels to me that there's a third party missing from those talks.
Well, there shouldn't be at the end of the day, because Hezbollah operates out of Lebanese territory. And Lebanon is sovereign. One need not include every minor party that exists in the United States, for example, or every major party that exists in the United States in talks between the United States and Iran. Right? You include the sovereign, and the sovereign's decisions should be accepted. And the sovereign, in this case, Beirut, has declared Hezbollah's military activities in general, including its actions since early March, to be proscribed, illegal. Hezbollah has refused to abide by Lebanon's by Lebanon's decisions, by the sovereign's decisions. and has threatened, or I guess kind of dangled the threat over Beirut's head, that once a ceasefire goes into effect, that Hezbollah will force Lebanon one way or another to reverse this decision, even though, again, it has not been implemented on the ground. It still remains a decision on paper. Lebanon, or Hezbollah, still views this as problematic. And at the end of the day, when we talk about peace, peace is not just the cessation of hostilities. Peace is not just the absence of violence or deceptive absence of violence in between, a decade or two before hostilities resume, right? This is what happened in 2006, for example, on August 14th of 2006, when Israel ceased its military activities in Lebanon, subsequently withdrew from Lebanon under Resolution 1701, wasn't peace. It was a deceptive calm until this conflict renewed. And the reason why it was deceptive is because you have this actor, Hezbollah, that refuses to come to a permanent modus vivendi with the state of Israel and accept its existence and use it as its prerogative to continue arming and fighting Israel when it views best, and not when Beirut views best, just as happened right in this round of conflict, where Hezbollah had given commitments to the Lebanese government and to Lebanese officials in the lead up to attacking Israel on March 1st that it would not do so, and did so regardless, according to their statements, in vengeance for Ali Khamenei. Later, they tried to modify that and to say that it was in defense of Lebanon, but the government of Lebanon says you have no right to defend us. We've taken away that right from you. And even Naim Qassem said yesterday that this was opening up a support front for Iran to release pressure off of Iran. So how do you have peace with such an organization that refuses to listen to Beirut and refuses to deal with Israel based on Lebanese interests and not Iranian interests?
Yeah, and that is the question then, isn't it? How do you do that? Because if the Lebanese forces are not strong enough, or don't have the will enough, or whatever the reason is that they haven't been able to disarm this group, then what do you do? That's what I was asking. There's almost no point in Israel and Lebanon agreeing to this if Hezbollah just turn around and say no.
Well, I think if the Israelis and the Lebanese can come to some agreement on what needs to be done with Hezbollah, if the Israelis can degrade Hezbollah sufficiently to where the fear with which Hezbollah holds Lebanon at bay can recede just enough for Lebanon to be daring enough to finish the job. The Israelis have said they can't finish the job. They do not have the capability. The Israeli army is 635,000 personnel. That includes cooks, that includes entertainment troops, that includes military secretaries. It doesn't have the ability to occupy the territory of Lebanon necessary to disarm Hezbollah. This ultimately has to fall to Lebanon de facto and de jure because it is the sovereign. So if Israel can help, even if not directly, because Lebanon can't be seen to be taking help from the Israelis, but if they can help indirectly with the degradation of Hezbollah sufficiently so that Lebanon can pick up the slack, perhaps these negotiations can lead to somewhere, given that Hezbollah has demonstrated that no matter what Beirut decides, it will continue to act in defiance.
And I've seen a lot of footage, heard a lot of people talking from Lebanon, and what has struck me is that in defiance of the Israeli bombings and the slaughter that the normal people of Lebanon, the Lebanese people, are seeing, they actually are leaning in towards supporting Hezbollah. So it's having the opposite effect, really, that people, when they see their loved ones being killed by Israel, are saying, well, actually, we're siding with Hezbollah.
Well, I think it depends. To speak of one Lebanese voice, I think, is to mislead oneself. Lebanon is part of the problem why Lebanon cannot disarm Hezbollah, has been unable to and unwilling to disarm Hezbollah, is because ultimately there are multiple Lebanons that have conflicting views. And without all of those Lebanons, right, the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Christians of their various sects, and the various subsectarian, effectively feudal lords, without their agreement, without their unanimity on any specific issue, you can't move on anything. And what you see in Lebanon is a divide between some people who want peace with Israel, genuine peace, some people who want a cessation of hostilities. Maybe they hate Israel, maybe they don't want peace with Israel, maybe they want nothing to do with Israel, maybe they want to see, so-called Palestine liberated from the river to the sea, but they also don't want support for one reason. want peace with Israel. They at least want quiet. And I think that should be sufficient for both sides, at least for now. Quiet, for 5 years, for 10 years, genuine quiet, not deceptive quiet where Hezbollah rearms and, keeps the sword of Damocles of renewed conflict hanging over both sides, but a genuine quiet where the cause for war between Lebanon and Israel is permanently removed. Perhaps in 5, in 10, and 20 years, that can lead to genuine peace. But let's at least aim for quiet now, and I think that should be good enough.
And it seemed like both sides, these ambassadors, both seemed to think that they were on the same page, at least in wanting the disarmament and the breaking down, really, of Hezbollah. What is the next stage? What is the next process? Is Israel going to just keep bombing? It looks indiscriminate to me, but there's probably a reason for that. They're knocking down buildings, maybe to scare Hezbollah out into the open. I don't know, but in the meantime, more people will die, more innocent people die.
Part of war, and I don't know if both Israeli and the Lebanese ambassador are on the same page. If we look at the State Department statement that was put out, there are two positions, right? The Israeli position is put there, the Lebanese position is put there, and you can read it for yourself. There are unbridgeable gaps. What Israel wants is the dismantlement of Hezbollah, and what Lebanon wants, at least in the immediate stage, is the return to the status quo ante bellum, which, are the conditions that exactly allowed Hezbollah to continue regeneration and rearmament. So these are, the Israelis find this unacceptable, and this is why they're saying they're going to continue military operations. And look, I don't know if the Israeli bombardment is just indiscriminate. There is certainly room to argue that, especially after April 8th. What I think the Israelis fail to do in this conflict, they say that Hezbollah is hiding its assets in civilian areas. There is demonstrable proof of this. The Israelis have demonstrated it over time. During this conflict, I think it would be beneficial to them to, so to speak, show their math, to show exactly what it is they're striking, what it is they're targeting, to be more clear, both for their own sake, for the sake of Lebanese who may be turning against Hezbollah, for the sake of those among Hezbollah's supporters, right, the softer part of Hezbollah's support base, who can be turned, to whom it can be demonstrated that supporting Hezbollah is not in your interest, that supporting Hezbollah does not lead to the conclusions that you think it will lead to. I think the Israelis can help themselves very much so by showing their math more. And look, there is the complication then of, do you burn intelligence assets? If I tell you, why I targeted this specific building, am I disclosing inadvertently the asset that led me to understand what Hezbollah was housing in this building? And I think that's a consideration for the Israelis to weigh. How much does, burning intelligence sources outweigh in terms of importance, keeping, the so-called hearts and minds of Lebanese on their side, or at least, neutral, or at least anti-Hezbollah, because the day after the war, when this ends, it will fall to the Lebanese to disarm Hezbollah. The Israelis have acknowledged this. The IDF has acknowledged this. And that will not occur unless Lebanese public sentiment remains that the primary threat to their country's prosperity, to their country's ability to simply exist on its own terms and decide foreign policy on its own terms, including the choice of war and peace, that danger falls primarily upon Hezbollah and its willingness to drag Lebanon now into two conflicts for foreign interests in under 3 years. I mean, the first conflict, however Hezbollah has tried to reframe this, was to support, right, the conflict that started on October 8th of 2023. Hezbollah explicitly said that it was doing this in support of its allies in Gaza, and it would not cease until Israel ceased military operations in Gaza. And now, restarting this conflict to support Iran's interests. I don't think most Lebanese want this situation, and it behooves Israel to keep, to at least explain its operations and its activities in such a way that keeps Lebanese sentiment from shifting away from that direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. David, thank you. Fascinating conversation. David Dowd there, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., and his work focuses on Lebanon and Hezbollah. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at the top of the hour is the wonderful John Boothman. He will be here talking us through the front pages for tomorrow's papers. So, I mean, maybe you're not getting up tomorrow because you're retired. You're retired, and it's lovely. But I do want to hear from you at midnight as to, is retirement everything you thought it was going to be? Have you managed to survive on a state pension? I don't think I'll ever get to retire, whether I want to or not. I've never been able to afford to put money into a pension. Being freelance, it was just never a thing. So I'm stuck working forever. But I'd love to hear from you. At least I potentially can, because all I do is sit and talk, right? It's not exactly taxing. But what about you? What's your retirement look like? Is it everything you thought it would be? Is it wonderful, or do you hate it? Or have you decided you've got to go back to work? Have you decided there's not enough money for you to live on? You can't afford to really get by on the pensions that you've got? Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Well, this is questions have been risen from this Standard Life report showing that 1 in 6 people who've retired is returning to work to make ends meet in a trend called unretiring. Financial pressures are a primary driver, with 30% reporting a worse standard of living now they're retired, and many admitting to underestimating the money needed for retirement or its potential duration, because we all hope we're going to live long enough to enjoy it, right? Well, beyond finances, some are heading back to the office to combat loneliness and to stay mentally sharp. So do give me a call on that. Susanna Streeter joins me now, who's an award-winning financial expert and chief investment strategist at the Wealth Club. Susanna, nice to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I see you got the memo on pink. That's good. We got that memo. Right. Unretiring. Is this a fairly new phenomenon? Because I imagine that a lot of people through history have found themselves having to either go back to work because they haven't got enough money or because they're bored.
It isn't a completely new phenomenon, no, but I think given the recent financial shocks, it isn't surprising that more people have retirement regrets and end up returning to the workforce. I mean, we've got longer life expectancy, and then of course combine that with uncertain economic conditions. It does mean that many retirees are finding that their savings are being stretched much further than they anticipated. And, you know, remember, we've now approaching another cost of living crisis. Many people are already feeling it with petrol prices and diesel prices rising hugely, all sparked by what's happening in the Middle East. And of course, it comes after the cost of living crisis sparked by the war in Ukraine. And making ends meet on a fixed budget with no room for extra earnings really is fraught with difficulty when faced with price spikes and with inflation expected to head higher again. I think it's likely to make people think, look, maybe I should just go back and return to work or find a new job just to help me through this difficult period. But I do think there is this social engagement piece as well. Actually, if you've been busy all your life, I can't imagine retiring fully. I want to be busy. If you're managing to fill your life with all sorts of things, and plenty of people do, others though find it difficult. And those work links are absolutely crucial. And once you leave them behind, it can be very lonely.
And we do know that there's a loneliness epidemic with older people, not specifically older people, actually, it's younger generations, but there is a loneliness issue, isn't there, with older people who perhaps don't, because they've retired, don't really engage with people in the way they used to.
I think the thing is you have to go out and make an effort. You have to go and join clubs. You have to put yourself out there. When you have to go to work, you just got to get up, do the same thing, but you meet people in the office. It's a kind of secondary effect, isn't it? Those friendships can build up over time and be very strong. Suddenly, you're turfed out. You've got to find a whole new circle of friends, and we all know at any age that can be tricky. And I think there's that element as well, and also that feeling that you're needed, that what you're doing really is worthwhile. So I think it's a combination of factors, but I do think, particularly that right now, with all of these cost of living spikes, it has concentrated minds. You think, well, perhaps I can just get paid more and have that bit of an extra social life as well. But it is a wake-up call, Petrie, for younger generations that actually at any age, it's never too late to save for your retirement. You would be surprised just how quickly those savings can build up if you are committed and you set aside that little bit every month without fail.
But it is
and
hard
so
to
I would
persuade.
say,
Yeah, I think I'm too late. But there you go. But it
not
is
too late.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because when you're younger, of course, the idea of reaching your pension is ludicrous, right? I mean, it's just not something. It's always a tomorrow issue until tomorrow is knocking on the door. That is very difficult, isn't it, to persuade people who are young people in their 20s and 30s that actually this is going to come much quicker than you think, and you need to be prepared for that, because there are so many drains on finances at the moment, and you've got young people who can't afford the rent they're paying because it's extortionate, and let alone get on the housing ladder, which would protect them to some degree when they reach pension age.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and retirement does appear to be on a really far off distant horizon. But even so, it really is vital to start building up a robust pot at an early age. I mean, it may be really tempting to stop paying into a pension while living costs are high, but you risk losing out on the magic of compounding. So this is when your pension pot grows through returns on your investments. Those returns are ploughed back in, and you start to earn extra money on the returns of your returns. And this is kind of magic, and it's like a snowball effect, and it really does take effect over decades. So really, I think if you want to take advantage of that magic, you've got to keep up those payments every month. You might want to scale them back, but don't stop them altogether, because you'll still have that compounding effect. And I think that's absolutely crucial. Just if you get a pay rise, put some of it away before you even realize that you've had it, so you don't get used to those extra payments. And it really does pay off over the longer term.
Again, though, a lot of younger people, sort of my son's age, in their mid-20s, you know, they are so aware of the situation that they find themselves in, that they're probably never going to own a home, all of those things, and also they're paying national insurance now for people who are in their pensions now, where they believe they won't have a pension themselves, or a state pension anyway, by the time they reach pension age, which is climbing. It's 67 now. It's going to go up. There were some people are predicting to 71 years old. So, it seems even further away for them, and they don't believe they're going to get any.
Well, that's why they need to start building up that money themselves. And I mean, I see it in the beauty bars and shops that have proliferated over the last 20 or so years. People are absolutely willing to go and get their nails done once a month. I'm not saying everybody is, but there is a huge swathes of younger people who are really willing to do that, and yet not set aside anything for their pension.
But they've got to have some joy. They've got to have something.
Well, you can still paint your nails at home. You can paint your nails at home, and you can have joy from that. That is what I've been doing for decades. And actually, what you're doing is you're paying for your nails to be destroyed, in my opinion, anyway. But another point. But do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? There are ways that you can find that £30 or £50 per month to put away. It can be £25 a month, and that will have an effect over time. That will snowball, and I think it's just really thinking about drinking that martini on the beach as you retire and not just spending everything right now. And it's really trying to change that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult one, because I feel so sorry for young people who are already spending every penny they earn on rent and food and bills, and just to have a little bit of fun. I don't know. They could be putting it away.
I definitely should have bought fewer frocks and more stocks. Okay.
Susanna, I should have
a balance.
Yeah, I should have done the same. It'll be all right. I'll be working until I drop, so that's fine. Susanna, lovely to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Susanna Streeter there, award-winning financial expert and chief investment strategist at the Wealth Club. Right, so coming up at the top of the hour, the other side of it is John Boothman. He's going to be going through the papers. But do have a think about your retirement and let me know at midnight if it's everything you thought it was going to be.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Petrie here with you, and I'm with you all the way until 1 o'clock. And of course, coming up at midnight is your chance to talk back. And I want to talk to you about this phenomenon of unretiring. 1 in 6 people who have retired are finding that retirement wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And so they are returning to work, whether it's because there's not enough money in the workplace or in retirement, or whether they're just bored and missing that connection with people, so they're returning to work. I'd be really interested to hear from you if you have retired, and if you have found it to be wonderful, perhaps, or is it really difficult to survive on your pension? Is it really difficult, those decisions that you now have to make that you didn't have to make before? Has your quality of life diminished since retirement because frankly, because of the money, or even because of the lack of connection with people in the outside world? So I'm just interested. I mean, it must be, is it easier to retire if you're a couple? Perhaps you don't get quite so bored if you're in a couple, but if you're on your own and retiring, how does that work? If you've not got children or any family, how does that make you feel? So just really interested to know the whole range of situations of retirement. And have you now really strongly considered unretiring yourself for whatever reason that might be? So do let me know. I'd be fascinated to hear about this. I don't have any form of private pension at all. Actually, that's not true. I have a tiny one that will buy me, I don't even smoke, but a packet of fags if I'm lucky. Actually, probably not by then. They'll be too expensive. That I got from the BBC, but that is nothing. It really is nothing. I don't even know how much is in it because it's so pathetic. But I'd be interested to hear from you. I'm going to be completely reliant on a state pension, my son, and perhaps the generosity of a few TV and radio stations that will let me witter on for a bit of cash as I go into my dotage. So that's what my retirement looks like. So what does your retirement look like? Were you sensible? Did you put money away? Have you got a nice little nest egg? Have you got a nice little final salary pension, perhaps, that one member of my family's got? I'm really jealous of. But what does it look like for you? And if you've already done it, are you thinking of undoing it? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, joining me now to discuss this and to have a look through the papers is the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, and he's not allowed to retire, certainly not from this programme, ever. John, have you planned for your retirement?
I find this a really, really interesting conversation, and I think obviously everybody has different views and different experiences, and we all know people who are going through all of that. I mean, I don't think I want ever to retire because my kind of work's my hobby.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoy it. And I don't want to say this too loudly, but I kind of do it for nothing, right? And I know a whole number of people in the same generation as me who've got different views of that. Some who've already retired and don't do much and have got lots of hobbies. Others, I had a conversation with a relative of mine, a close relative of mine, who's just retired, and he's finding it quite difficult because he's had a professional job for all of his life. He's worked very, very hard. He's done very well. He's got a good pension and all that stuff, right? But he doesn't have any hobbies, and he's missing his work. And I've certainly been trying to encourage him and somebody else that I know as well to kind of take something up. Is it golf or find something that you're really interested in and go off and do it. I'll tell you a story. I can remember in the late 1990s when I worked at the BBC, there were a whole number of, they were all men, all retired, all at the same time. And actually, they were all great golfers, great outdoor kind of people. And do you know what? I will say this in this way. They really didn't last very long afterwards, because after they retired, I think they just lost their routine.
Yeah,
And
you do hear that, don't you?
Yeah, and that's certainly something that I think in my case that I kind of probably have a fear of or something. So there's look, everybody's different, and some people, will find it difficult retiring because, as you say, of financial reasons, that maybe they haven't built up a pension, and given what's happened with the inflation and the cost of living, feel that they have to go back to work. But that whole thing about losing friends, losing networks, losing, for me anyway, losing the routine, and contact, and maybe a feeling that if you're not doing the things that you were doing at work, that you're not valued by other people as much as they might. And you get older anyway, and you kind of think people ignore you anyway, right? But I think, you know, that's a really, really interesting subject and a really complex subject, and it's different for different people.
Yeah, I think that like you, I mean, my job is my hobby. We're very lucky to be doing something that we enjoy and we love. And although I bemoan the stress sometimes from having to be across the news all the time, and it isn't always good for your mental health, particularly at the moment. In fact, I'm taking a week off next week just to literally decompress, just to be able to put my phone down, and maybe for a couple of days try not to look at the news. But because I'm such an information hound,
you
and
won't succeed.
I know I won't succeed. I will look, but at least then I'm not having to. Oh, I don't know. I tell you what, I'll be frustrated that I'm not on air to talk about it. That's what'll happen to me, because it is my passion as well. It's particularly defence is my passion. So it is looking at it at the moment, but I do need that time to just try to switch off. But I can't see me retiring fully. Even if I don't do a regular programme, I can't see me retiring fully for the same reasons as you have.
Yeah. I mean, what I do admire, I have to say, and again, I have somebody else in my family who is like this, is I hugely admire people who have got either passions or interests, or in this case, something creative that they do. Well, it's my brother-in-law is an incredible guy. He's a fantastic musician. He makes animation videos in a wee corner of his house. He, in another wee corner, goes off and makes painting, does a bit of painting, nothing elaborate, but comic paintings which are sold in a couple of shops and stuff. And I mean, I just so admire people who are like that, who can do that. And that's kind of, something that's different from the work that they professionally done over, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
But I'm not like that.
And what about Mrs. Boothman? Would she want you to retire?
No. My other half is a harder worker than anybody I know, would she? No, I probably just get under everybody's feet.
Yeah.
Because, but that's another thing. I mean, it's an interesting facet of the discussion that you yourself were talking about, 10 minutes ago, which is it easier to retire when you're a couple?
Yeah.
I suspect that it is. I suspect that it is, but again, everybody's different. But, on the one hand, if you're a couple, if two people are retiring, people think it's great, you can walk off into the glorious sunset. Whereas on the other hand, it might not work in that way for couples, for, whomsoever they may be, because they might get in each other's roads.
Yeah, I mean, they might just discover that after all those years of working, they've got nothing in common anymore, right? So it's probably best to keep it a bit separate. I do think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that people are this whole idea of unretiring, and I wonder, John. I mean, the jobs. I'm interested to know what jobs they're getting, and whether those people having to unretire for money is taking jobs away from maybe started jobs as well, because that will have an impact on youth employment if older people are going for the same jobs in retail or whatever.
Well, I think that's one bit of it. It depends what the job is, of course. You know, I suspect that a lot of people that unretire maybe go back to some facet of what their previous employment might be. I mean, I think that probably the case for, you know, more people who've been in professional jobs. They might go back a couple of days a week or whatever. Yeah, look, you know, you do see lots of older people working in retail, for example, and stuff. But I suspect that, you know, of course, the prime motivation for that might be financial, but, you know, the other benefits that come with that of just being out, having a new routine, being around other people are absolutely incredible, I think, as well. I think, you know, the great fear that some people maybe have about retiral is that they'll end up just sitting, you know, getting up every morning and sitting in front of breakfast TV and then, you know, watching sport for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of, and especially if you've been working all your life, that must be a real switch, right? To suddenly feel useless in a way, to feel like you have no value or no use anymore, and like you said, you're already invisible. When you get to a certain age anyway, nobody, I could walk down the street naked, no, I wouldn't, but I wouldn't want to offend, but no one would notice me anyway, because when you get to a certain age, people don't know.
But it's also bad for people's mental health.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I again, you know, I've known people in the past who after they retire, you know, sometimes you see them, and maybe you haven't seen them for a few months, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe this is just me, they all of a sudden look very old.
Yeah, there's something about it, isn't there? That there's just that moment that you accept that you're old or older, you're retired. So that must, you know, must make you feel a certain way about yourself. I do think it's really interesting, and I think that it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had, because the pension age is going to go up and up and up and up and up anyway. So, you know, people are going to have to be prepared to work for longer, even if they haven't been able to retire.
Yeah, but lots of people, I mean, I also think there's something for some people in that kind of thing that, you know, 70 is the new 50 or something like that. There's kind of, you know, people can get a new lease of life, and they can get, you know, if I were to retire, you know, one of the things I think I would do, and I certainly want to do, is just go and lose some weight or something like that. You know, there's things that I kind of feel that I want to do, I should be doing, but because I'm working, I'm not doing, right? So I guess all swings and roundabouts, and yeah, it's a fascinating discussion, the whole thing.
Yeah, you're not allowed to retire though, John. I've told you that already. Just don't even think about it. You can have a break now for a couple of minutes, but we'll be back to look at the papers.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. And with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Well, this story on the front page of The Sun, John, would solve all our problems with wanting to retire, and that's who wants to be a billionaire.
This is a great story. I like this story. It's appeared in a couple of the papers. You know, how we can all join, is it the billionaire lotto that takes place in 45 states in America,
yeah,
for which it happens 3 times a week. It costs you $2 in America, and you can get to become a billionaire.
But I'm interested
really
in this
interesting.
because in America, a lotto win is subject to tax. And in the UK, it isn't. So I wonder how that's going to play out.
That's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that, right? Well, it's I would imagine it would have to be subject. Would it be subject to tax in America before they pay it?
I don't know, because that is a whacking great tax then. So it wouldn't be a billionaire. See, that was the first thing that came into my mind, was that I know that they pay tax on winnings in America, and we don't on lotto winnings here. We pay the tax up front on the ticket price. And that was the way the Exchequer makes more money, because it wouldn't make as much on the wins. So yeah, I'm just really intrigued by this. But this is the operator Ulwin expects the move to more than double the number of lotto millionaires from 140 a year to 345. Do you play the lottery?
No, I did at the beginning, but I don't really. Again, I find, you know, the odds of winning, as in becoming a billionaire, I mean, it must be absolutely huge, right? I think I saw a figure earlier. It was like there were about 12 nothings after 292 or something.
They say that you're more likely to be able to walk up to a stranger in the street and guess their phone number than to win the lottery.
It's quite good.
I mean, and that just made me go, well, I'm not wasting a couple of quid on a ticket then, right? Because and you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice in the same day than win the lottery. So there's all of these things people have impressed upon me that I just think, well, what's the point then? You know, I'd never.
But the whole thing gets you into all these great debates that we've had, except, you know, it's at a much higher level about, you know, would you really want to win £1 billion, and what would you do with it if you did?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the lottery first was introduced, and it was all very exciting because we all thought we were going to become instant millionaires, and all of those conversations were had then. But I think perhaps £1 billion would be crippling for a lot of people, wouldn't it? I mean,
I just, it's inconceivable. I can't even get my head round. No. Right? Well, you know, it's what is interesting for me about some of this stuff is that in the UK, I mean, I think there are, you know, that so many people have become millionaires to some extent that kind of we almost maybe know one of them, right? I mean, I can remember in Scotland the couple who won 134 million on the lottery. The guy he worked at Scottish Television, and he was a camera operator, and his wife, and they actually donated a considerable sum of money, which paid for the yes side in the independence referendum.
Oh, really?
In 2014. They donated £2 million to that. They bought a castle somewhere in Ayrshire, I remember. But it was kind of, you sort of almost felt you knew who they were.
Gosh, I mean, that's probably my castle in Ayrshire. My family My family hail from there, the Lindsays. Well, look, it's people will love this. It's a refresh, shaking it up. They're saying from June the 7th, every main lotto draw will give players 2 chances to win for the same £2 ticket. But the odds are the same. if everybody gets 2 chances, it's the same as everybody getting 1 chance, right?
Yeah.
It just,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, logically, so what? If I got 2 chances and everybody else got 1, that would be worth talking about. Anyway, there you go. You can become a billionaire. Let's have a look at the Times now. Reeves dashes hopes of boost to defence funding. The Chancellor the plans a rise of less than 2.5 billion a year, despite being warned that Britain's safety is in peril. And it's interesting to listen to the numbers, John, when you hear that we spend 5 times more on welfare than we do on warfare.
And this was the point that Lord Robertson of Port Ellen, George Robertson, to most of us in Scotland anyway. I mean, I found that whole George Robertson story absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
General Secretary of NATO, former Defence Minister under Tony Blair. I've known George Robertson for, dare I say this, nearly 50 years. I can remember when he was elected. I was in my teens at a by-election in Hamilton. He's been a major firmament in Scottish politics and UK politics for a long time. I mean, there is nobody more loyal to the Labour Party than George Robertson. So for George Robertson to go public in the way that he has is actually a really, really interesting phenomenon. He's not the kind of guy who, goes along and carries out rows in public. He's very, very loyal, has been very loyal to Labour governments right throughout his career. And here he is making a statement saying that welfare spending is eclipsing defence spending, and really, another choice needs to be made given the situation with security and defence in Britain and the international situation. The Times story I'm fascinated by. There's so much in that very short story about this issue, basically saying that the Chancellor's only prepared to put up 10 billion over the next 4 years, which would mean, according to defence chiefs, that there's a black hole of 28 billion. But then goes on, and this is what's interesting for me about the article, to talk about the choices and governments, about choices that the government faces. It says that Keir Starmer wants to provide money to alleviate energy prices for households who can't afford the increases in energy prices. He also wants to not to do something about the fuel duty, to cancel that, so he needs money for that. And in the meantime, of course, as we know and we've all talked about for long enough, the welfare bill in the country continues to spiral. So unless the government's prepared to make hugely different choices, and it talks a good game in defence. We've heard a lot from this government about defence spending, defence investment, how they are making the country more secure. And here we are in a position where the very author of the defence review says that it's not been done.
It is really extraordinary, isn't it, that what Lord Robinson was saying, because he's very plain spoken about it, and when you look at the numbers, it is absolutely gobsmacking. And he's basically saying, look, difficult choices have got to be made, and things are going to have to the things are going to have to change, and that actually Keir Starmer and the Labour government are not having the right conversations with the public in saying, look, I know it's unpopular, this happened for the First World War and the Second World War, things have to change, but they will have to change. And I like that about him. I like that he's very direct, and in saying, when you're not having the right conversations with the public, you've got to tell them the truth about the situation that we're in.
And George's truth is, we are underprepared, we are underinsured, we are under attack, is what he said, and we are not safe. I mean, I had a look earlier at the numbers of people that we have in the army, which is only 73,000, I think. And once you include the Gurkhas and reserves, it takes it up to 108,000. We've got 11 frigates and 6 destroyers, and clearly some of them aren't even working properly, if we've seen. And we've only got 137 Typhoons in the Air Force and 37 Joint Strike Fighters. So it kind of, if we were to be involved in a real live war.
Well, we've been embarrassed on the world stage, haven't we, in this last 6 weeks? I mean, it has been embarrassing. You know, that we've got the HMS Dragon sort of limping its way over to you know, Cyprus, and it just made us look incredibly weak.
Well, the other bit of this, yeah, you're entirely correct. The other bit of this, though, is that, you know, I think one of the points that I heard George Robertson making in that speech in Salisbury tonight was that, you know, the government said we would have a national conversation about this.
Yeah.
There ain't been much of a national conversation, and one of the reasons there ain't been much of a national conversation is the national conversation's far too uncomfortable for the government to have.
And that's the point he was making, is that we've got to have a proper, he said, you've got to have a proper conversation with the public and let them, you know, let them know that there's tough times ahead in order to fund the defence of the realm. Because without defence, nothing else matters, right? It's just nothing else. There's no point in anything else. The other story at the top of the Times there, signs of compromise as US and Iran hint at fresh peace talks. I haven't really heard Iran hinting at this. I've heard President Trump saying, yeah, they've called begging for a, you know, peace deal, and we're going to talk in a couple of days. I don't know if that's true or not.
Look, I don't think, you know, there is so much spin and counter-spin, and people, well, Trump mainly changing his mind from one day to the next, that it's very, very difficult to fathom out, you know, where this story is going, what it's doing. You know, the Iranians say they're going to block the Straits of Hormuz, and the answer to that from Donald Trump is that he blocks it instead. You know, it's a very, very odd situation. I don't know. I suspect behind the scenes, I think it certainly would suit the Americans to get off this hook. And I think given the amount of damage that there's been in Iran, they would want to get off this hook as well. But you can guarantee, given the two parties involved, even though there will be lots of difficulty along the way getting to that point, you can guarantee that they will both claim victory at the end.
Oh, God, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's the world economies, of course, that are the biggest victim to this war. And it drives me absolutely nuts when Trump talks about the Strait of Hormuz like he wasn't the one responsible for closing it. It just, you know, I just want to shake him. But thank goodness I won't ever be in the same space as him. Let's take a break, John. I'll be back in, we'll both be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, the Daily Express, a former police officer urges the government to give injured 999 workers a medal.
Yeah, look, this is an interesting story again. This former police officer who I think was stabbed during the course of duty, he's now retired, had to retire, I think partly as a result of his injuries, says that, you know, there should be more recognition, some recognition for people who are hurt in the line of duty. I think, you know, given you know where the country is, and given that I'm surprised that this doesn't happen already.
So am I, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, he was so brutally stabbed in the back that the medics removed 27 fragments of rib from his chest cavity. Yeah. And then he retired sick. I don't think it's too much to ask for, right?
Not in the slightest. As I say, I'm amazed that, that there isn't some kind of recognition for people in these circumstances. Never mind any financial compensation people might be due as a result of these kind of injuries. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. The Daily Mirror is talking about no exit plan and no idea. I think what's interesting about this for me is that there's a lot of people around the world now who are not kowtowing to the Trump. You know, they're no longer bending the knee to Donald Trump. We've got Georgina Meloni, the Italian PM, who he's now upset with. And Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer standing up to him, others, Macron standing up to Trump as well. There is a definite shift, isn't there? That sycophancy seems to have dissipated somewhat.
I think, you know, perhaps the most important part of all that is that's what's happening in America too. And I think the last couple of days, right, probably haven't helped Trump very much, where he seemed to tweet a picture of him as Jesus Christ, or was it a doctor, as he himself said. He then managed to get into a fight with the Pope, both of which would have, you know, hurt him, I think, amongst the Christian base in America, which, you know, have been traditionally his big supporters. So I think that's important. I think domestically, I'm fascinated by this as well.
Me too.
You know, these quotes in the front of the Mirror and other papers are Rachel Reeves talking about this. I think, you know, over the past couple of days, having listened to Keir Starmer, having listened to Wes Streeton and others, it's quite interesting that the attitude of people in the British government is hardened towards Trump, whereas before, you know, they were trying to be more accommodating. They were trying to be a bridge, perhaps, between Europe and America. And, well, one, they've got a bit fed up with that themselves, but two, it's clearly the case that they want to be where the public is in all this.
Yeah.
So,
but also, it doesn't seem to make long-term difference anyway, sucking up to Trump. I mean, you know, they thought that sucking up to him would protect this country from the tariffs, and we got the same as the Taliban did. You know, I mean, it never seems to pay off in the long term, because then, of course, you know, we got the 10% tariffs, and then Greenland was on the agenda, and he was threatening higher tax. So it doesn't seem to make any difference. And I think people have realised that actually sucking up to Trump is pointless, that it doesn't really achieve anything.
I think we've realised that now.
Yeah.
I think we had to go through some kind of process to get here. And again, what's going to be fascinating about this, and this will be amazing to watch how this plays out, and the details of it have just been announced, is what happens when the King and the Queen, who Trump likes, we are told, He likes the royal family. He liked the former Queen. What's going to happen when they go on the state visit to America? I think this will be worth the watching. I think the Foreign Office and others are hoping that it'll ease the tension between the two governments. Let's just wait and see. And dare I say this, wait to see how long it'll take Trump to put his foot in it.
Oh, I'm seconds, I would imagine. I mean, look what he did with the Japanese leaders. I mean, that was just absolutely shocking. So Rachel Reeves blasting Donald Trump's chaotic war in Iran, saying it's hitting British families in the pocket. And she's off to Washington this week or next week, maybe next week, to a meeting. So she may well bump into him. Who knows? Right, the Daily Telegraph. Labour set to lose control in Wales. This will be devastating, won't it?
It'll be for the first time in a century.
Yeah.
Labour's been the dominant party in Wales for like more than 100 years. The last polls I was looking at in the past few weeks have got them down at 12%. They're way behind Plaid Cymru and Reform. For a time, it looked as if that was neck and neck, and that Reform might even win in Wales. It's kind of settled down a bit and looks as if, certainly, you know, with 3 weeks and a bit to go, that Plaid might actually be the biggest party. It will be, again, fascinating to see what happens after the election. You know, there's a new electoral system in Wales. They've increased the size of the Senedd as their parliament, and their assembly, in this case, is called in Wales. So it will be interesting to see whether there will be a Plaid government, or whether, you know, they might even try to make some kind of accommodation, possibly even with Labour. You know, it's a terrible situation for Labour. The article then goes on to talk about, you know, huge losses for Labour across the whole of the country, including in England. And it's certainly the case if you look at what's happening in Scotland, and I know a bit about this, that we are certainly heading for the SNP back in power. It looks like the SNP even poll twice as much as any other single party, and Labour are in a dogfight really for second place in Scotland.
I mean, what's interesting about this as well is that, of course, Reform were hoping to sweep through as well. They were hoping that this, you know, not only would it be a crushing defeat for Labour, but that they would do really well in these elections. But, you know, if Labour's fighting for second place, then where does that leave Reform behind, you know, parties like Plaid Cymru?
Well, I think in Wales what will happen is Labour will be in third place and Reform will be second. I mean, I think what's interesting is that whatever happens on election night is going to be a good result for Reform. There isn't any doubt about that. You know, they will go from nowhere in Wales and in Scotland to a substantial number of seats. They might come second in Scotland. They'll certainly at least come second in Wales. They will win a huge number of council seats across England, again in places, you know, working class places previously associated with Labour. I think they will sweep the boards, so it will be a good result. I think there's just some interesting things starting to happen when you look at some of the polling that's around, that, you know, there might be some tactical voting against Reform, for example, in a lot of places, which might blunt the edge of, you know, the success that they could have had. But look, people shouldn't be in any doubt. Whatever happens on election night on May the 7th, it will be a good result for Reform.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a picture on the front page of the Telegraph of Harry and Meghan, who are doing a sort of pseudo-royal tour of Australia. They seem to be going down quite well.
Yeah, look, they always look happy when they're in every single country apart from here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a really nice picture there on the front page of the Telegraph. I mean, the issue still seems to be every time they come here, she seems to get miserable, he seems to get angry, and then it all goes back to where it was before.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I think it's a bit confusing to have them doing a tour as what? As who? You know, I mean, they're not working royals. It's a very strange, sort of odd thing to do. This little story here. Shops are overcharging for oil, says Filippo Berro. That's olive oil producer. And I just bought some olive oil. I mean, practically had to take out a mortgage.
I mean, the price of olive oil's been very high for quite a long time, though. I mean, I don't know if it's risen recently, but I certainly noticed maybe about a year and a bit ago that the price of olive oil started going through the roof. I mean, there are alternatives, but we all love our olive oil.
Yeah, no, so I like a good cold press olive oil. It's got to be a really nice one, and so it is really expensive. I don't know, but it's interesting that the Filippo Berro is saying it, because I used to use their oil actually.
Is some of this not due? It's not simply as a part of everything else and food prices going through the roof. I mean, I think some of it has got to do with the weather. For example, in the whole of southern Europe, we've had freakish temperatures, and I think that's affected the crop. You know, the crop as well.
Yeah. No, I can't live without a decent olive oil. I don't think life would be worth it, John. It's just not worth it sometimes. The UK economy, before we take a break, takes a triple hit from the Iran war. This is after the IMF and the International Monetary Fund saying that we're going to be the hardest hit.
Partly because of our dependence on foreign energy imports, particularly gas. I mean, that's a big thing. Also, the fact that, frankly, we're a very vulnerable economy because we've got a weak economy. We've had and still have the prospect of higher inflation, and that thing that we don't really have particularly high. We don't even have particularly high levels of low growth. So what the IMF is saying is that we will be hardest hit by what's happening in the world economy. We face slower growth, fewer jobs and higher living costs because petrol, energy and mortgages are all going to go up. And then, you know, the government's going to have to make some of these defence choices that we spoke about. And that's going to affect people's cost of living. So the UK economy doesn't face great prospects in the forthcoming period.
No, but this number is astonishing here. It says that welfare now accounts for £1 in every 4 spent by the government.
And at a time when the Labour backbenchers in the House of Commons have decided, because of the cack-handed way that the government handled things like the winter fuel payment, that the one thing for them that's become sacrosanct is not reducing welfare bills.
Yeah, because they got a bloody nose from day one. Quick break, John. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. I have to say I love this story, John, on the front page of the Metro. Cheers Timmy. This is the arts chief thanking the actor Timothy Chalamet for his bizarre insult. And he's saying, well, the ticket sales have gone up because of it.
Well, he said a few weeks ago that nobody cares about ballet or opera. And what basically appears to have happened, I don't think just at the Royal Opera House we're talking about this, but in other places as well, right, is that it's encouraged lots of people to go and see the ballet and the opera and lots of other things at the theatre. So this is the Royal Opera House basically thanking Timothy Chalamet for drawing new audiences to their performances.
Yeah, because he says, I don't want to be working in ballet or opera or, you know, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore. That was what he said in I think it was in a chat show, just saying, oh, nobody cares about ballet and opera. I don't want to be in that. It's kind of like, well, you couldn't be anyway. Do you know how much skill it takes to be a ballet dancer or an opera singer? I mean, who do you think you are, Timothy Chalamet? Well, I mean, he's talented, but I don't think he could do either of those jobs.
I don't think anybody cares much about table tennis, right? But
no.
That didn't stop him making a big film about it, which, you know, got him nominated for lots of awards. Yeah. But look, it's a nice, happy story. It's a good story.
It is a good story, and it's good to see the arts doing well, actually, for a change. Just before we go to your picks, I just wanted to choose this one. The Daily Star. Yes, 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 Minister. Labour's Samantha Niblett, that's a great name, isn't it? Niblett, is to lead a debate in the House of Commons on sex education. The self-confessed porn fan is planning on bringing love toys to Westminster. And I love this line. He said, that should create a buzz amongst members. At the Daily Star at its finest.
Look, yeah, absolutely. I have to say, I have never heard of Samantha Niblett.
No, me too.
At all. I wonder whether I will ever hear of her again, right? But that having been said, I am not sure that that's the kind of story that I would want to be known for, and possibly for the rest of my parliamentary career.
Yeah.
She's out there apparently promoting lifelong sex education, which she says and she wants there to be, and I'm not sure this is exactly the kind of thing I would be promoting in the Houses of Parliament either, a summer of sex. So there you go.
What a horrible
good luck,
thought.
Samantha. We may never hear of you again.
Yeah, we may never hear of you again. And the thought of any of those MPs, it's like looking at your own parents, right? Looking at MPs thinking, no, surely they don't do it anymore. Let's take a look at, we mentioned very briefly about the way that leaders seem to be turning on Trump now. But Giorgia Meloni, she was a particular favourite of Trump's, right? I mean, he was fawning it was almost embarrassing. He was fawning all over her and saying how beautiful she was and how attractive she was. But now he's really slagging her off.
Well, look, you know, Giorgia Meloni is a person of the right in politics. So when Trump was elected, you know, he was attracted to her politics, if nothing else. They certainly looked as if they had a good relationship in any pictures at any conferences or in the White House, I think, as well, that you saw them. And it looked as if, you know, this was somebody that he could do business with. But I think now it shouldn't be any surprise, as we've seen in the last couple of days, that Giorgia Meloni, being the Italian Prime Minister, took a bit of umbrage at what Donald Trump was saying about the Pope.
And the picture of him as Jesus, yeah.
And the picture of him as Jesus. So it now appears that that's another great fallout. But look, we are now talking about, he's fallen out with Carney in Canada. He's fallen out with everybody in Scandinavia. He's fallen out with everybody in NATO. The Prime Minister of Spain is currently in China, being feted by Xi Jinping. He's fallen out with the Germans. He's fallen out most of all with us. He doesn't really like Macron. So we shouldn't. He's lost Viktor Orban in Hungary now.
Yeah, that's a big blow for him.
Of course, right. So again, we shouldn't be perhaps surprised that he's fallen out with Giorgia Meloni as well. But it doesn't really do to expect anything other than falling out with the Italian Prime Minister if you're going to slag off the Pope.
No, well, exactly. And also, she's got to protect herself, right? So the sense is that she's now having to side with the public away from Trump, because at one point her relationship with Trump was seen as a bonus, and now it's seen as something quite toxic. So she's got to distance herself from him, and she didn't do so well recently, and they think that's because of her relationship with Trump. So it's all a bit about them protecting their own backsides as well, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things I thought was funny the other day was, of course, that what complicates all these relationships, particularly around about the whole religious element of it, is that it's the first American Pope.
Yeah.
And I think for a whole load of Christians in America, even those Christians who are not Roman Catholics, this was a big thing. And now we've got this slightly bizarre situation where he's fallen out with him. I heard them say the other day that that the Pope, who's Pope Leo's brother, who's called Louis, is a better guy than the Pope. Right.
Yeah, because he's MAGA, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Everything's just all about personal relationships, right?
It really is. It's just, but he does take everything so. He's very thin-skinned. And
I did. Sorry, it's worth saying. I did hear somebody suggest that in Scotland, that was one of my friends suggest that perhaps his umbrage and his anger at the Pope came from the fact that his mother was a Presbyterian from the Western Isles, but I don't think that's probably true.
I don't think he probably knows that. I get the impression that he's not very switched on with that. Another Donald Trump story, because let's face it, there's barely anything that happens without him involved in it. Slamming the UK over North Sea oil and demanding no more windmills. Who made him god of the world?
Well, he said that. I'm going to say two things here. I mean, firstly, I think there's a lot of people in Donald Trump, and dare I say this, might actually think he's right in some of this stuff, right? Certainly as far as oil and gas goes, that we should be developing the Rosebank field and we should be developing the Jackdaw gas field, and that, given the current international situation, Ed Miliband isn't in the right place. I think that's actually quite interesting. But the second thing is that, Trump's had this position about the crazy windmills, as he calls them, for a very, very long time. When he first came to Scotland back in the mid-noughties and started developing his golf course in Aberdeen, he got into a huge fight and fell out with the then First Minister, slightly after that, the then First Minister Alex Salmond, who'd been best buddies with initially, over the windmills that were blocking the view in his great, fantastic golf course that he has in Aberdeenshire. So So it's not new. He's still using the same language and saying the same thing. But again, I think some people might have some sympathy with his views that we have to develop the North Sea.
It would add 1 or 2% to the world's oil if they were, and they've already got all the good oil out of those jackdaw, and so it you know, the rest of it would be really dirty oil and need a lot of refining. So I mean, he's not refined in his knowledge of what's there, perhaps.
Sure, look, that's a point of view. The other point of view, though, it has to be said, is that you know, this industry in oil and gas supports thousands and thousands of jobs, not just in Scotland but everywhere else in the UK. And
yeah, but maybe we'd be doing that to create jobs rather than create an enormous amount of oil and gas. But there you go.
Sure.
John, I've got to go. Sorry, we've run completely out of time. John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. So there you go. That's the papers for tomorrow. Now, coming up, it is just you and me for the Talk Back Hour. Is your retirement everything you thought it would be?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and this hour is entirely yours. It belongs to you, and I'd love it if you would just pick up the phone and have a chat with me. What we're talking about is retirement, because of this phenomenon known as unretiring. Some older people are having to unretire due to financial pressures. A fifth of people questioned said that they did not realise how much money they would need in their retirement. They found that 3 in 10 retirees said their standard of living is worse now than before they retired. A significant proportion of older people are deciding to unretire as the financial reality of retirement falls short of expectations. 1 in 6 retirees surveyed said that they have already returned to employment, that's 8%, or are considering doing so, is also 8%. while some have returned, are considering returning to work for social reasons, such as feeling disconnected from other people. Financial pressures are also triggers for finding a job again. 3 in 10, that's 30% of retirees, said their standard of living is worse than before they retired, compared with just over a fifth who have seen an improvement. So I wanted to know from you if you have retired, number one, and number two, is it everything you thought it would be? Is it just amazing? Is it wonderful? Have you got enough money? Do you enjoy the time? Do you have lots of hobbies, lots of things that you want to do? Or are you somebody who's retired and suddenly gone, well, this isn't what I thought. This is not the joy and the fun and the sleeping in the mornings that I thought it was going to be. And are you considering going back to work for whatever reason? Whether it be money or just being a bit lonely or feeling a bit useless, maybe feeling that you want to contribute. And if you have gone back to work, what kind of work have you got? And is it just about the money? I mean, in America, you see a lot of really old people having to do what's known as DoorDash. And it's kind of like Uber Eats and whatever all the other ones are, when you order food, takeaway food to come to your house. But they're doing it because of their medical bills, because, of course, they're not protected in the US. And if they need to buy drugs into their old age, they've got to pay for those drugs. They don't get, after 60 that you get free prescriptions in this country. They have nothing. They have nothing like that. So there's quite a lot of these really, really very old people in their 80s and 90s delivering takeaway food. They cannot retire. There was one guy who was doing it, I think he was 91, I think his wife was 88, and she had quite expensive medical bills that he had, pills that she needed to live. And so he was working, I think it was 7 days a week, doing DoorDash for 13 hours a day or something, just to earn enough money to provide for his wife. So we don't have those pressures, thankfully. Thankfully, the NHS is free at the point of need. There is a pension, and we do get things like free prescriptions and cheaper bus fares and things like that as you reach retirement age. But I'd like to know if it's enough. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're just thinking, with the cost of living going up, it's just not enough money. Or is retirement just joyful? Let me know. I really would like to know. I don't think I will retire. I can't. I don't think I can afford to retire. But fortunately, my job is sitting on my backside talking for a living, so I reckon I can continue doing that for a while. I mean, I do have hobbies. I do have things that I love to do. So I wouldn't be bored, I don't think, because I love my own company and I love reading and painting and doing all those sorts of things. So I don't think I get bored. I never get bored. But I think I would miss this a bit. And the colleagues I have are all right. They're kind of okay. They're great. They're great to work with, and it's nice. You get a bit of banter. All of those things I would miss horribly, actually, if I didn't work. So what about you? How is retirement for you? Give me a call. And if you're not retired yet and you're considering retirement, what do you think it's going to be like? Certainly if you're in your 30s, for example, you must be thinking, well, I don't think there'll be a state pension by then. It certainly won't be a triple lock. What will retirement, do you think, look like for you? Or are you just planning that you're just going to have to keep working till you drop down dead? And I think that's probably me. But unless my son becomes very wealthy, and then he'll look after me, I think. But yeah, I don't know. If you're planning on your retirement, have you planned? These, honestly, when I speak to pensions experts and they say, oh, you need to be saving from the age of 20, and who does that? Who does that? Really? And also saying things like the expert that I spoke to earlier, Susanna, saying, oh, I see these young people having their nails done and they could easily put, well, so what? Come on, life shouldn't just be about working and being miserable until the point of you retire and then you live your life when you're old. You know, just let people have a bit of fun on the way, right? I mean, for me, it wasn't fun. It was being, you know, freelance and a single mum and having mortgages and things like that had to be addressed. So there was never enough money to put to one side for, you know, did I occasionally have a bottle of wine and a packet of fags? Yes. Could I have survived without them? Probably not. So I don't begrudge people having, you know, trying to enjoy the life that they're living rather than predicting a life that they may not live when they're older. So I get it. I totally get it. And I do I regret it? No. Will I? Probably when I'm retired, maybe. I don't know. But I don't regret it, actually. I probably should. I'm not a financial advisor, clearly. But look, give me a ring. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Calls a charge at National Road, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Let me know, is retirement everything you thought it would be, or are you concerned that retirement just simply won't be an option by the time you get to that age? Right, let's go to the calls. Stephen is in Wakefield. Good morning, Stephen.
Morning.
So, retirement, what was it like?
Well, I'll just tell you how I ended up in that state. Basically, I worked for a company for just short of 20 years. COVID hit. You're drinking more and more through COVID. Just one of them things, but you sort of have a glass and then it turned into two. And short of that, I ended up in hospital for a month and a half. Cirrhosis, basically.
From drinking?
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't drink when I was working.
Yeah.
But sort of after work, it just turned into 1 to 2.
Yeah.
So then that got diagnosed stage 4 terminal, which is fair enough. But that's been explained now that stage 4 means it can't be repaired and it's terminal. I'll probably die from it at some point. But,
so this is your liver, right?
Yeah. So I got medically retired, fair enough. I got given 8 to 12 months to live. And I would sort of then, I'm just laid in bed then. I did everything doctor told me to, you know, and everything like that. And in the end, the sort of says, well, you've done really, really well. And that 8 to 12 months, 6 to 12, 8 to 12 months sort of doesn't really exist now. So in effect then, I've been medically retired, so I retired and I sat around.
And what age was this, Stephen?
That was a couple of years ago, you know, about 45, 46.
Okay, so young, right.
Yeah. But then I'm sat around and I'm getting better eventually. And I thought, well, I've been medically retired, so I'm actually really bored. I've no hobbies. Telly's rubbish. And I'm doing now. So I says to wife, I says, I'm going to get a job. She went, you don't have to. I went, but I'm bored because I'm social. I like talking to people.
It's
like
the banter at work, isn't it, and stuff like that you miss.
Yeah, but the thing is, the banter at work changed from when I started working. And so I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something for me, what sits right for me, what I want to do, and times are all right and stuff like, you know, hours I can work, etc., etc. So I got a little job doing cleaning for a bit, which is steady away. You know, it gave me some extra money. The thing is about all this is I didn't need the money at the end. So I was just doing it to get out of the house. Mm. And then I saw a job come up just over the road from where I am, and I thought, I'm going to apply for that. It's next door to where I live, near enough. And it was a completely different thing from what I'd ever done before. And basically, I'm now a house manager, so I look after over 55s. I think there's 65 flats, 100 residents, and I look after those, any problems they've got. So it was a completely different change of what I was doing before, office-based before. in a very stressful environment.
So this is one of these these complexes of homes that only people over the age of 55 can buy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I've heard about those. I think my friend's mother and father living in one. And so what you do, you manage it. So you manage the maintenance, you manage any problems they've got.
Yeah, any outside problems they've got, sort the gutters out. It's not a euphemism, but yeah, and make sure window cleaners are doing a good job, and just all that sort of thing. And do you know what? First time, I really enjoy getting up and going to work.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then
and it's just totally different to what you were doing before.
Absolutely, completely different. I was data protection before.
Wow.
And safeguarding and stuff like that.
So what do you like about it? Is it that it's just very varied and getting to meet people and chatting to people?
Yeah, it's so like I do 911 in the morning.
Yeah.
And you saw it all go in, I maybe have a chat with a few residents. If we get any problems, they tell me, and then I'll send it off to whoever needs to send it off to. Just general chit chats and stuff like that. And all people are best people to talk to. Doesn't just sit and talk, about anecdotes and stuff like that. And it's just there's no stress. You're making people happy, and you're helping them out, and it's flexible, and it's not about the money because I don't earn very much at all. But I just absolutely love it.
And obviously you're much
happier.
What does your wife think about it? Is she like thrilled for you?
Yeah, she likes it as well. She's just been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So,
oh, poor thing.
Yeah, so what I tend to do now is I go and because I have to do tidying up down in communal area down where I work and stuff. So I come home and then just help her out for a bit. And then it's like I can go to sleep in the afternoon if I want, stay up. We've got enough money to go out and eat and stuff like that if I want to. So
completely changed your life.
Yeah, basically for the better.
Yeah, just think if you hadn't got poorly, you'd still be in that office job presumably.
Yeah, hating it.
Yeah, hating every minute of it. So there's a silver lining, isn't there, to all of that?
Well, that's it. And I just think now it's down. After got my diagnosis and that.
That's amazing. You've done really well.
I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it within the reason, if you know what I mean.
Can you ever imagine, you've had a taste of retirement early. Can you ever imagine retiring, or is it not something you're looking forward to?
We're looking for a place in sun, if you know what I mean. With my wife, she reacts better in sunny places, if you know what I mean. So we're looking to that. Since we've got capital in the house is worth a few quid. So, but I've often said that she'll go move over there, and because I get a flat with this job, so I'll live in flat and join you once every couple of weeks, fly over once every couple of weeks, and then go back and live in.
That sounds perfect, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's just a matter of time, getting kids out of the house and stuff like that. So.
Well, you seem to have got it really well planned out, and that is, I think that is a lesson, isn't it? That it's not always just about the money that people want to go back to work. You were bored. You were just bored, and without a routine. That's the thing, isn't it? It's having that routine, which sometimes feels like a drag, but actually, if you don't work, then how can you enjoy time off in a way?
Yeah. Before it was just like having nothing to get up for.
Yeah. And why would you bother?
Yeah, so now don't have to get up early, just go in, and it's all good. All because, it was down to COVID, basically.
Yeah.
So, but
I'll tell you, on my days off, I barely ever get dressed, and I'm going to the door at sort of like 3:00 in the afternoon. In a dressing gown. People must think I'm a right slob.
Yeah. I mean, if I had a hobby or something, then it'd probably been different, I think. But So,
yeah, but I mean, you've got it perfect. I mean, this is it couldn't be more perfect for you. Across the road or just next door. You know, you can be there for your wife and look after her, and you're doing something you enjoy.
Yeah, it's all turned out really well. Because I wasn't even thinking about retirement, obviously, until I got poorly and were forced into it.
Yeah.
But everything, sometimes bad things do work out into make good things, if you know what I mean.
It certainly seems to have worked out for the best for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, my whole outlook on life changed. And now with extra money I get from working, you know, it goes down making memories for kids and stuff like that. We can take them places and stuff, you know, and just doing that sort of thing.
That is brilliant. And also, like you said, it's just that change of attitude, just being able to do something that you enjoy. I bet. Do you wonder why you didn't do it before, or could you not have done it before?
It wasn't something I ever considered. I was always looking around the same industry if I were looking for jobs, doing the same thing. And it's like when I sort of mentioned it, there's like family stuff. You can't do that. You've never done that in your life. So I can do whatever I want. Yeah, I'll make it work. You know, you learn to do these things. You can do anything if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, just reinvent yourself.
I tell my kids that all the time.
And I do think, actually, that the days of having one job in one business have gone now. I think there'll be a lot more people, Stephen, like you, who are switching careers at various points in their lives. I don't think that really exists anymore. Just doing one thing for your whole life, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing.
At least I'm in a job now that AI can't take over.
I'm waiting for a robot to replace me any day now, Stephen. I'm telling you, there's going to be one here soon. Good to talk to you, Steve. I'm so glad that worked out for you. So forced into early retirement, but went back to work and is much, much happier for it. What's your story? Are you waiting to retire? Are you excited about retiring? Have you retired? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Can you afford it? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Petrie here with you with Talkback, which is your hour. It is your chance to do exactly that. And I want to talk to you about retirement because there's a phenomenon that is happening now. And that is that older people are now being forced to unretire. So basically to go back to work or to get some kind of job. Not all for financial reasons, but certainly the cost of living and inflation and all those issues, which is going to get worse, as we know, because of what's going over in the Middle East. That more and more people are finding that they cannot afford the retirement that they thought they were going to have, and that many people are saying that their standard of living has dropped since retirement, that they thought they would be better off in a way, that they thought they probably need less money than they actually do need. And with rising bills and rising costs and food and everything like that, that perhaps it is not what they thought it was going to be. And a lot of people do believe in this country that pensioners are really wealthy because of the triple lock, because, you know, a lot of people in their pension ages now have been fortunate enough to buy a property. They may be mortgage free by now. And they're just, you know, maybe even got some good fat pension from the industry that they worked in. So a lot of people have the view that being a pensioner is living in luxury. And I'm sure there are some that do. I mean, you know, there's certainly my father, when he retired, he had a final salary pension. So did his wife. They you know, they didn't even notice not working. They travelled a lot. They, you know, were in Spain a lot, and really enjoyed themselves. So it's not always the way that it's miserable to be a pensioner. But I suspect there are more people out there struggling with being pensioners than there are those ones you see on the telly playing golf and enjoying their retirement years. So I'd love to hear from you to let me know what retirement is like for you, or if you're somebody like me who's looking at retirement in the future, what you imagine that you'll be able to. I know that I absolutely won't be able to retire, and unless unless my boy makes a fortune, and then I probably will. But I'm not sure I'd want to be 100% retired. I think I'd want to continue doing some kind of work, some kind of broadcasting work. I'd probably be an old lady podcast, won't it, or something like that I do about aches and pains, and just put out a podcast that nobody listens to. But I'll probably do that, to be fair. Because I know broadcasting is my thing. It's what I've always done. That's it. That's all I can do. So I think that I won't retire. I don't have a pension, so I'm stuffed really. I'm really restricted to what I will be able to do. But let me know if you're somebody who's thinking about unretiring, or you're somebody who has unretired. I'd be interested to know what job you managed to find for yourself. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. John is in West Lothian. Good morning, John.
A very good morning to you.
Good morning. So, retirement, talk to me about it.
Well, I've been retired for a number of years now, which I never wanted to do.
Oh.
Like yourself, I thought I would work forever because I enjoyed what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I worked from when I was 15, so I never went to university. I didn't have all the qualifications and all the things that people say you've got to have these days, but I never was out of a job all those years.
Yeah. I never went to uni either, and I've done all right.
Yeah, well, I would imagine so. You look as though you have anyway.
I've done all right.
Yeah. So, you know, retirement, everybody thinks retirement is great. And it can be, or it can be horrible. It's what you make of it, and dare I say, it's not all about money. It's about how you feel, what you're doing, how involved you are. I mean, I started off in the Merchant Navy as a little cabin boy type thing, and I ended up as managing director of a company.
Wow.
And I worked in the service industry all my life. So I was used to working with people, and suddenly when you're not working, you think, what are you going to do? You know, forget your hobbies and all the rest. It's not the same thing at all. So I got involved in England, it would be a parish council. In Scotland, it's community council. Working for the community. Absolutely free, no money, no nothing. It's given back something that you have benefited from all those years, that, you know, when you were living in the community and all the rest of it. And I think that, you know, voluntary work can contribute and actually make you feel so much better than actually taking a salary in many occasions. And, you know, I've been in it now for over 8 years. I'm now not just looking at my own community council, I'm looking after the whole of the joint forum for the whole of the council area that I work in. I'm vice chair of a football club, which sport and I never really got on very well because I'm the most unsporty person you could want. But I help the lads out and I get them sponsorship and all the rest of it. So there is so much you can do in retirement, and it can be horrible or it can be absolutely so rewarding, far more than a job in many occasions.
So when you first retired, John, was it a bit of a shock to the system before you got into this voluntary work?
Absolutely.
Did you hate it?
I absolutely is miserable as hell.
Really?
And I think my wife might maybe have sold me or even give me away.
Really?
It was such a shock to the system because, the year, it was over 60 years that I'd worked, basically. And suddenly you were finding that you weren't getting up in the morning. So you need a purpose to get up in the morning. You need something to do. You need that you're making a contribution to society. And that's where I got involved in it. It was almost by accident, but I went along to a community council meeting to complain about young kids setting bins on fire and all the rest, and what are they going to do about it. And suddenly I got involved in what can be done and what can't be done, and built up a network, if you like, of similar people that wanted to work for the community. And I think we now have one of the best communities in our area. And that's not down to me, that's down to a whole group of people who are like-minded. And most of them are retired. Some are not, some have still got a full-time job. So on that basis, you can share your responsibilities.
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because the words you're using there are, sort of purpose. And feeling part of something, and I suspect that more of us need that than we think we do, because a lot of people will be looking at retirement going, oh, how great, I don't have to get up, I can. But then if I didn't have deadlines, right, if I didn't have, I'd be an utter slob. I literally would. I'd be lazy and wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't go anywhere, and because I love being at home, right? So it's really important, isn't it, to have that sense of purpose? Because if you don't work, how can you enjoy not working in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was so easy to fall into that trap, and then you become miserable. You come down, your self-esteem goes and everything else. You actually have got to have a purpose in life, at whatever age you are. And that's where I think that society at the moment is, they're not giving the young kids enough, building up respect and community thinking and all the rest of it. And I feel quite strongly about it. And I go along and talk to the local primary school. I think they are fantastic. They believe in this type of thing, about giving kids experience for life, building up those experiences. And, being an old person, that I am. I'm a grumpy old man, and that's what I'm known as. But people know that they can come to you, and you will do your best to try and help them.
Yeah.
And, you get, and the satisfaction you get out of that is unbelievable. And it costs nothing to be nice to people.
Oh, I
to help
totally
people.
agree with you on that. But your wife must be happy as well that you have purpose and that you're out and about and doing something.
Oh, absolutely. If I was in the house all day, we would have committed murder by now. But honestly, I think that the main thing is that when you're faced with that sort of situation, whether it's natural retirement or forced retirement, you've got to go out and look for something positive. Positive thinking makes a huge difference to how you actually get on, and the response you get from other people is amazing, because people want people to work together generally. And I think this country at the moment is in a hell of a mess.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that tradition of looking after each other. And if we can get back to that, whether it's old people or young people, makes no difference at all. It's about working together to give people purpose in life, to give them satisfaction in life. And it's not all about money. Yes, money is important. And when I was young, I travelled all over, and I spent my money when I was young. And, my wife and I, we travelled almost all over the world and enjoyed it. But we may not have as much as other people have got today, but we're happy in what we're doing.
And I totally get that, because that's one of the reasons I don't think I would ever really retire. And I was talking to John Boothman earlier, and saying that I'm taking a week off next week to try and not look at the news, right? And he went, that's not going to work, because he knows me, and I'm a journalist, and I'm absolutely obsessed. So even the thought of taking a week off and not looking at the news is ridiculous. It couldn't happen. So the idea of me, retiring and having nothing to do with this business ever again is crazy. That just couldn't happen, I don't think.
No, but you will always have that, though. The thing is, though, with the experience and the knowledge that you've got, you can put that to such a huge benefit for people around you and for society generally. You've got that. You don't have to do it formally in the job that you've got, which I think is fantastic. I thoroughly enjoy the show every night. But, you can do that in other ways that will give you benefit and will share that experience and knowledge that you gained over these years for so many other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So with your working in the parish council, or whatever the equivalent is that anything like the work that you did before? Have you been able to transfer your skills across, or is it?
Not at all. I mean, yes, it is, because it's dealing with people. It's about listening. And one of the biggest things and I think one of the biggest problems that politicians have is that they don't listen. They talk to people, they talk down to people, they don't listen to people.
They talk at them, don't they?
Yeah, and I learned that as a manager, and I had a fantastic tutor in my early managerial career who says that you may think you know it all, you may think you have better ideas, but listen to experience and talk to people and listen to people, because those people you're listening to will probably know more about certain things than you do, but with your experience you can put it together and you can actually benefit, and it will actually work if you're willing to listen and not just talk down to people. And that's the problem with politicians these days. And most of them have got no life experience. They've got no business experience. That's what I find so frustrating, is that, we're governed by people who haven't got a bloody clue about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But they will tell us what we should have and what we should do. And it's not about giving people things for nothing. It's not about benefit scheme. Here we are in the country that is, at the moment is, almost fighting for our very existence. And we want to give away to people that don't want to work. And why is that? Because the state is not making them respect each other. They're not training them to actually have respect for themselves by earning something than just been given it.
I absolutely agree with you, and I do think it's that sort of sense of that lack of purpose that people can now just fall back on the nanny state for everything, and they don't need to, but what are their lives like? That's the thing. What a waste of a life as well. I can't help but think that somebody who's got nothing to get up for.
I couldn't live like that. I just could not live like that, and I just don't understand why people can. They think that somebody else has got to go up, the early morning brigade, to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go out and work and all day and all this, to pay them to sit in the house. I just find it absolutely abhorrent that people have got no disrespect. They've got so much disrespect for themselves, never mind anybody else.
But talking of money, you say it's not about the money, and you do all this voluntarily.
Yeah.
Were you lucky enough to have an extra pension, or are you? Yes.
Yes, I work for a company that had a private pension. I understand that, but and that's where I say the state should be looking after those that hadn't had that opportunity.
Yeah.
They say, oh, the elderly's got this triple lock and all the rest of it. Some people, it's the only way they can live.
Yeah, it really is. And there are talks now about means testing the state pension, and that those people who've got private pensions would be ratcheted down on getting it wouldn't be a universal benefit, is what I'm saying.
The only thing I've ever had in my life is the state pension.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing else, and I'm now, if the good Lord lets me, I'll be 77 later this year. So, I've worked for anything that I've got, and I don't ask for anything. And I think, and I think that a certain generation don't ask for things, they will work for it. And there's somebody in our local community that'd been to Paris 3 times a year to Disney, and now they're in Morocco or something else, and it's all on state money.
Wow.
That to me is taking it away from the genuine people that need it.
Which was the whole point of the welfare state in the first place.
Exactly, and I'm 100% for it. I know many people that genuinely need it, and, as a community we go out of our way to help those people as well. But why should people expect today, but unfortunately society is, and the government is, they're encouraging people to think like that. They're almost doing
I think it was COVID. I think it was all the free money that was being thrown around during COVID.
COVID certainly didn't help it.
Yeah.
But we've now got a state system where kids at primary school, never mind high school, are being almost taught that you're entitled to the free this, free that, free the next thing. Now, if people genuinely needed it, now my parents were very, very poor. My parents were, farm workers. They didn't own a farm. They were farm workers, and they brought us up with everything that we actually needed. But the one thing they taught us was respect and self-respect, and you get what you work for. You're not entitled to anything unless you go out there and earn it. And
I was taught the same thing.
I'm terribly old-fashioned like that. I get a lot of stick for it, but hey ho.
I don't think it's old-fashioned. I think it's absolutely right. And what amazing life that you've built for yourself, and making yourself, feel happy in your retirement, which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I wish that I hope for a retirement like that myself. John, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, John, there in West Lothian. So are you retired? Are you thinking of retiring? Is it everything you thought it would be? How have you managed it? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and this is Talkback, and we are discussing the phenomenon of unretiring. And this is where people who have retired are coming out of retirement for whatever reason. And most people, it seems, the reason is financial because of the cost of living. And if you've only got a state pension, that is a finite amount of money, right? And with prices going up, the struggle is real. So a lot of people believe that retirees or pensioners are loaded and having, the time of their life, playing golf and trotting off to the Costa del Sol for 3 holidays a year. But that isn't always the reality. And there are those as well who maybe have retired as single people and who are a bit lonely and are missing work, or just not having that routine that we all find so boring when we're going through it. But it is actually important. I mean, if I didn't have to, honestly, I'd be shocking. I always needed to go into a career where there were deadlines, where I had to be at somewhere at a certain point, because if it was ever left to me, I'd just be floating around like a fairy. So I just think that it's interesting to look at retirement and imagine what it might be. And I don't know whether I like what I see. I don't think I will retire. I don't think I can afford to retire. And even though I've got hobbies, I just don't think that would be enough. I think too much freedom would be bad for me, is what I'm saying. Too much freedom without any guidelines at all, I think would be dangerous for me. I don't think I'd cope with it very well at all. So listen, give me a call. Let me know about your retirement. Is it everything you thought it was cracked up to be, or is it worse? Is it better? Do let me know. Well, earlier on I spoke to Suzanne Streeter, who's an award-winning financial expert and chief investment strategist at the Wealth Club, and I asked her if people returning to work after retiring was a relatively new thing.
It isn't a completely new phenomenon, no, but I think given the recent financial shocks, it isn't surprising that more people have retirement regrets and end up returning to the workforce. I mean, we've got longer life expectancy, and then, of course, combine that with uncertain economic conditions. It does mean that many retirees are finding that their savings are being stretched much further than they anticipated. And, remember, we've now approaching another cost of living crisis. Many people are already feeling it with petrol prices and diesel prices rising hugely, all sparked by what's happening in the Middle East. And of course, it comes after the cost of living crisis sparked by the war in Ukraine. And making ends meet on a fixed budget with no room for extra earnings really is fraught with difficulty when faced with price spikes and with inflation expected to head higher again. I think it's likely to make people think, look, maybe I should just go back and return to work or find a new job just to help me through this difficult period. But I do think there is this social engagement piece as well. Actually, if you've been busy all your life, I can't imagine retiring fully. I want to be busy. If you're managing to fill your life with all sorts of things, and plenty of people do, others, though, find it difficult. And those work links are absolutely crucial. And once you leave them behind, it can be very lonely.
And we do know that there's a loneliness epidemic with older people, not specifically older people, actually, it's younger generations, but there is a loneliness issue, isn't there, with older people who perhaps don't, because they've retired, don't really engage with people in the way they used to.
I think the thing is you have to go out and make an effort. You have to go and join clubs. You have to put yourself out there. When you have to go to work, you just got to get up, do the same thing, but you meet people in the office. It's a kind of secondary effect, isn't it? Those friendships can build up over time and be very strong. Suddenly, you're turfed out. You've got to find a whole new circle of friends. And we all know at any age, that can be tricky. And I think there's that element as well. And also that feeling that you're needed, that what you're doing really is worthwhile. So I think it's a combination of factors. But I do think, particularly that right now, with all of these cost of living spikes, it has concentrated minds. You think, well, perhaps I can just get paid more and have that bit of an extra social life as well. But it is a wake-up call, Petrie, for younger generations that actually at any age, it's never too late to save for your retirement. You would be surprised just how quickly those savings can build up if you are committed and you set aside that little bit every month without fail.
It is
and
hard
so
to
I would
persuade.
Say,
Yeah, I think I'm too late, but there you go. But it
not
is,
too late.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because when you're younger, of course, the idea of reaching your pension is ludicrous, right? I mean, it's just not something. It's always a tomorrow issue until tomorrow is knocking on the door, that is very difficult, isn't it, to persuade people who are young people in their 20s and 30s that actually this is going to come much quicker than you think, and you need to be prepared for that, because there are so many drains on finances at the moment, and you've got young people who can't afford the rent they're paying because it's extortionate, and let alone get on the housing ladder, which would protect them to some degree when they reach pension age.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and retirement does appear to be on a really far off distant horizon, but even so, it really is vital to start building up a robust pot at an early age. I mean, it may be really tempting to stop paying into a pension while living costs are high, but you risk losing out on the magic of compounding. So this is when your pension pot grows through returns on your investments. Those returns are ploughed back in, and you start to earn extra money on the returns of your returns. And this is kind of magic, and it's like a snowball effect, and it really does take effect over decades. So really, I think if you want to take advantage of that magic, you've got to keep up those payments every month. You might want to scale them back, but don't stop them altogether, because you'll still have that compounding effect. And I think that's absolutely crucial. Just if you get a pay rise, put some of it away before you even realize that you've had it, so you don't get used to those extra payments. And it really does pay off over the longer term.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Talk and this is Talk Back, and we've been talking about this phenomenon known as unretiring, whereby you literally do that. You retire and then you decide you don't want to be retired anymore, or you can't afford to be retired anymore. Got loads and loads of messages in on this. Oh yes, loads. Right, Gary and Polly said, we took a year out to travel the world last year at the age of 55. We wanted to do this before we were too old. We've now moved to France to try and have a very simple, cheap life in an old house we bought years ago. So we are retired at the moment, but may take on small jobs. Yeah, I think that the best job to have as a retiree is probably a handy man or woman. Just being able to do things like that, because there's always a shortage of those. I might actually do that. I might do a bit of plumbing and electricity. Can you imagine? What a disaster. Actually, no, I fixed my own dishwasher and my own oven. So, yeah. Ernie said, I'm 68 and still working because I'm one of those lucky people who loves their job. I work in construction. It's hard but very rewarding. I get a small pension because I missed some contributions which I give back to the government in tax. When I watch quiz shows on TV and a lot of contestants say I'm retired and loving life and I'm 59, they're always public sector workers, i.e. teachers, police, firefighters, councillors. It's never bricklayers, shop workers, factory workers or private sector workers. Private sector workers pay for public sector workers because they don't make any money for the country. The pension bill for this country is extortionate and unsustainable. But because of the public sector pensions who really haven't contributed anything to the public purse, yes, the public sector spends money and the private sector makes money. That's the general rule, isn't it? At 48 years old, my only savings is via a state-backed Nest pension, which started around 10 years ago and will be worth nothing. I really enjoy my job as a cabinet maker, but it can be quite physical, and I'm under no illusion that it's something I continue into my older years. Enjoyable retirement is something that I've already resigned myself to not realising when I get older. I'm a single man, I don't own my own home, and I've rarely been in a position to save any money. So when I can't do the job I love, I'm already thinking about things like becoming a delivery driver for supermarkets to keep a roof over my head. Oh, that's such a shame, isn't it? Cabinet making is such an exquisite job, such an amazing talent, a really incredible talent. So he says, well, so where's the justice? I've worked hard my whole life, I've paid into the system my whole life, and yet I guarantee there will be nowhere that I can see my days out in comfort without selling an organ to pay for it. If I had the money, then I would leave right now. And that's Mark in Devon. That's that makes me sad. Rob said, I'm due to retire in 2 years after 40 years of working. I love days out, city breaks, overseas travel, coffee shops and cake. Now you're talking my language. Theatre, exhibitions, craft fairs, concerts, cinema and restaurants, theatre, live music, meetups for drinks with friends. I love running, the gym, seeing my family and all my nephews and nieces. I play guitar. I like a bit of DIY. Always stuff to do around the house. How do you become bored in retirement? I don't know. I suppose not everybody's got all of those loves. And you might not, when you retire in 2 years, you might not be able to afford all of those things like the city breaks and the travelling and there's always money for cake. Always money for cake. I don't think I'd get bored either. Like I said, I really enjoy all my things that I do in my downtime. I love it. And I've got my boys as well. I've got my dogs. They keep me busy. Oh, by the way, tomorrow there's going to be an update on Humphrey. And I can't, because it was a year ago tomorrow that I brought him in as a puppy and showed him to you. I can't bring him in tomorrow because he's so naughty. He's just too, I couldn't, he's just too naughty at the moment. But I'm going to show you some video and some pictures of him now that he's a little bit older. So it's a year tomorrow that you first met Humphrey, but he is so naughty. Anyway, Sammy says, I started a pension way back pre-children. It has the absolutely amazing total of £91 in it. That's about like mine as well. I became disabled after the kids, so my retirement will be bleak unless my son stays around. And that's Sam in Lancashire. I'll always be here for you, Sam. Don't you worry about that. Deborah says, I retired at 60 on an NHS pension. At 65, I became mortgage-free, and at 67, received a state pension. Happy days. I now devote my time to rescuing and rehoming all the stray, abandoned cats and kittens that I can manage. Having 8 myself, it's satisfying rescue these fur babies, particularly compared to a work life of boring, meaningless admin. My cats and kittens give me great joy. Rescue also brings me into contact with other like-minded people. I have a strong sense of purpose. That is a lovely retirement. That is